Okay, hello everyone. Let me start. So I couldn't finish chapter 8 last week. So I need to change schedule for quiz 1. It was scheduled for you to take the quiz 1 today, but I decided to move the quiz to September 7th. So you'll take 2 quizzes on the next Tuesday. Okay, and well, also you expect there are 2 assignments, but we just could finish Oracle VPN. So the assignments 1 and 2 need to shift to the next week as well. So I'm going to make an announcement when is the due of assignment 1 and 2. So possibly the other assignments will be shifted to the next week. To next week of each week. Okay, so we talked about how to set up Oracle database, and there are 3 options. You can install as standalone, or you can install the Oracle database as a remote access controller, or you can install Oracle as a remote access node, which means the Oracle database you install will play as a role as a server in distributed network. But we have no, actually this is almost impossible to in academic environment. So we don't need to install nothing but standalone database. But standalone sounds like it only operates within the limited network, but actually it is not. It is a single database, although it still functions like all the part of RAC or RA. Okay, yep.
You said the quiz would be moved to September 7th.
Yes.
We don't have school.
Oh, right. And you will need to take the quiz on September 9th.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, right. We don't have a class, right? So
No, on Monday or Tuesday because of Labor Day.
Right. So you'll need to take quiz on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, so and this is part of Oracle installation. And today I'm going to talk about Oracle architecture. So basically, the one you may think that is complicated, but the reason why Oracle has very complicated architecture is Oracle supports more functions unlike the other relational databases. So let me give you some example. Some other relational databases like SQL Server or Ingres and IBM DB2. Once you install the database, then it only can play a part of OR in terms of broad databases, such as the database, SQL database you install may need to work as a OLTP database or data warehouses. Oracle supports all the functions at an Oracle database server. So to support all different purposes, Oracle enables for you to create multiple instances. So which means in one Oracle database server, you can organize instance as a OLTP, which is for regular purposes, or data warehouse. Well, even it is possible to organize the instance as a database mart, which is kind of smaller database set than data warehouse. And data warehouse supports aggregated data form to conduct data analysis. So many of cases, I don't know if you ever heard business intelligence. Have you guys heard business intelligence? Yes, that is analytic software which shows aggregate data on the screen using some charts. So the most popular data business intelligence application is our maybe Power BI. And these days, Tableau gets more popular than Power BI. Power BI synchronized much better than Tableau with SQL Server by Microsoft. But anyway, Tableau has supports many of the other Tableau can be synchronized or associated with many other relational databases, even SAP and Oracle database. So again, data warehouse is still it is database, but it has totally different purposes than OLTP has. So again, it is possible to create multiple instances, support different purposes. Oracle has complicated architecture to make sure all the functions work correctly. And Oracle is a relational database which supports multiple users or multiple sessions at the same time. So users may connect an instance or multiple instances at the same time. And once a user tries to connect to Oracle database, it needs to communicate with server process like this. So if you create an instance, then instance will occupy one process. So if you, in other words, if you create multiple instances, two instances, then you will have two server processes which exclusively process the instance. So server process is the first process on Oracle database server, which connects to end users. Which means if you try to connect Oracle database using SQL Developer, then SQL Developer will communicate with server process of the instance. And each instance, a server process of each instance will communicate with PGA processes. And PGA, program global area, program global area, communicate components in system global area. And under system global area, within the system global area, there are many processes. So processes, so even many Windows systems, you can find many processes like this. Well, these processes are generated by applications. So Google Chrome basically has 7 processes because there are many background background applications, embedded applications. And each application may have one or more processes. So it is quite easy to understand. But if you go down, then you will see some processes managed by system, Windows system. Some processes are not recognized by us. For instance, well, it looks like this, a process which controls CPU, host process for Windows task, runtime broker. Can you guys see which application or which component of Windows systems initiate these processes? Can you guys find that? No, we can't, right? There are many processes. Sometimes service host, local services, the names are identical, although the process IDs are different. So like this, Oracle is a system which runs on operating system, but still it is complicated like many of Mac operating systems. So in system global area, there are many processes like these, and each process at the level of process as instance, it only used for the instance, but in the process, or the process in the system global area, it has its own purpose. And these processes work for processes in program global area. So again, this process has its own purpose and functions. So archive, let me give you an example. Archive, okay, DB writer process. This is the only process which actually permanently write data at databases. So in other words, if two users just updated some information and executed commit commands, then once confirmed, DB writer process, it is conducted properly, and then if DB writer confirms, some other process confirms, okay, this is done by user 1 and 2, so you have to write, then DB writer begin to write data at actual database files. So when you think files written in serial, for instance, if you write something at first, the thing is written by you at first has a higher possibility locate the first position of the file. But database has different structure, file structure. Database writes a file in random access file structure. So in other words, even if you insert new data, the newly added data and the new data may not located at the first position. We have no idea where the actual data located within the random access file. So anyway, if we have let's say we have 1,000 records, even though we have multiple records, each records doesn't have a single file. All the records written in one random access file. So that is why DB writer has very important function. So where is the actual data file located? If you, okay, now it is time to connect your virtual server. Okay, so I individually sent email to let you know your VPN account and password last night. Okay, so can you guys check out? Everyone has received my email, right? Okay, then now it is time to connect the VPN. Right, so my account is info 560-208. Yours may end with 02 through 007, right? Oh, let me show you again. vlab.aum.edu. And if you don't see, then you can add virtual server by clicking this button. Then you can type the address. So vlab.aum.edu and okay, then you will see one connection and double click. Okay, so I don't want to see in the full screen. Let me shrink it. Okay, so I can see the virtual machine within a window. But it is up to you. If you want to see the virtual machine on in the first screen, then you can just expand that, then you can see it. Anyway, So if you open local PC, local disk, C drive, and go to Oracle. Okay, this is Oracle Home. Okay, Oracle Home directory, and maybe the variable may not defined yet, but I believe Oracle may set up system. Okay, maybe this one. Spacey. Okay, found. So if you hit right button on the empty area, then you will see property. You shouldn't select anything. Properties, then you'll see the system information. And go to advanced system settings. Maybe you haven't seen this pop window at all, but go to advanced tab, then select environment variables. Okay. Okay, although I installed Oracle database, Oracle didn't define its Oracle Home yet. So what I have to do is go back to Windows Explorer and go into Oracle and select the path and copy. So this is a location of Oracle Home. So it's time to define Oracle Home directory. So there's two locations. You can add here or you can add here. But if you add the variable for users, this variable may not be shared with the other users. So if the system variable affects to entire system, then you have to define new variable by clicking button under system. Okay, new and Oracle Home. Type Oracle Home variable name, and now paste the directory. So value will be C:/Oracle. And this variable may not be applied until you restart the virtual machine. Okay, then now you can see Oracle Home is defined as a new variable. Okay, now you can hit OK button and OK. You cannot hit cancel, you need to hit OK. Right now, well, we don't see any change yet, but this will be the first step to define, to modify, to configure Oracle database. So this is the Oracle Home directory, and data file, which means the random access files, are located under Aura data. And if you go to Aura data, then you'll see you have to make sure continue. Okay, and Aura CL is the only instance we have. So I decided to create, well, actually it isn't possible. If you install Oracle database first time, then you have to create one database instance. And that is named ORCL. And this is folder where the Oracle data is written. So There are three types of Oracle database files: users, sysocs, system. Users. So normally, if you create a new table and input new data or update or delete data, DB writer modify data within users file, and its extension is DBF. And if you create a temporary objects like temporary table, the temporary table is written in temp 01 and DBF. You can modify the file name later, but once you modify a file later without any alternative, you have to modify path of temporary database file using EM, which stands for Enterprise Manager, or modifying the value using SQL Developer. System contains system information. In that case, system, well, but you shouldn't be confused. In this case, system does have nothing with global area. You have to think about the system. It is about system of the instance you created or you have. So it is about system. It is about system of ORCL instance. So it contains manager information such as roles of users, privileges, and what's the limitation of your table. For instance, if you create a table and it limits the size of the table within 100 megabytes, the meta information is recorded in the system DBF file. And sysocs contains audit data. So it contains history of changes to support system audit. So do you guys know, have you ever heard CISA certificate? This one? Have you heard of CISA certificate? Certified Information System Auditor. You may heard CISA, right? Right. CISA is a certification which issued for system auditor. And what system audits do is they change audits if the system complies with many of regulations like HIPAA or HIPAA and what there are a lot of regulations around IT. Sarbanes-Oxley and what else? So what normally CISA when system auditors audit the system, they check out databases and how database modified, how database maintained by looking at sysocs DBF file. So if you mistakenly delete the file, then it is impossible to audit database. But actually, this is one part of task of CISA. CISA needs to audit database and operating system and network and policies of the company. So, in control files, it is, I'm going to talk later, but anyway, control files even is stored within this folder, okay? And you can find out there is redo log files. Because we haven't updated anything yet, but if we modify the database, and it is possible to, and if you figured out you made a mistake or you need to recover, then you have to look at redo logo files and make Oracle database system conduct recovery processes. So this is really important location of your database. So let's say if you create a new instance named let's say Jackson Hospital. So you're now, let's assume you're a database admin of Jackson Hospital. Okay, then you will create database instance named Jackson, and similar files of ORCL will be automatically created under Jackson folder. These are the default. Right now we have 3 read logos files only, but if you operate database for a long time, then we will have multiple, much more than read log files. These are the defaults only. So anyway, DB writer writes data records in the users, or depending on its purpose, it may write in system sysaux file. So when you did assignments in Info 3560, I could see how many you tried, how many issued queries, because I was able to look at sysaux file. So you may not feel really comfortable, but I can, as a database, I can see all the activities when you connect it and which query you produced and what's the result of the query. Okay. So, and DB writer is one of a component or process in system global area, and log writer is a component which writes a log file. Okay, and while this is physical level file, but logically you can organize. Actually, Oracle database may organize multiple data file for one logical database. So which means right now we have one user's file only. We can, Oracle system automatically may create multiple file to organize users' table spaces. Okay, but you need to, why we sometimes we may think, managing single database file is easier than multiple physical files, right? It is much easier when it is possible to manage the database file appropriately at operating system or file level. Now it is the file size of users 01 dbf is just 5 megabytes, right? It is not that easy to copy and backup if file size is less than a couple of megabytes. But have you ever copied multiple terabytes? Multiple terabytes. Have you ever tried before? So here's the biggest benefit of when we have multiple database file is if we have always need to think about there might be disk error or errors at the storage. Hard drive always can have bad sectors, right? And even SSD can have bad sectors as well. But if bad sector is located at users 02 only, although we're going to lose data in user 02, but we don't need to lose data in users 01, 03, or etc. But what if there's a bad sector in one really big database file? It is impossible to recover. It is impossible to write, which means your database, although you maintain the database for 5 years or 10 years, due to the one bad sector in the file, your database will be stopped, suspended. You are going to impossible to operate the database. So it is, well, that is our biggest benefit, I think, when we have multiple database files. So although logically there is one database tables, user files, but you may have multiple database, physical database files for logical level, logical object. Okay. So again, this is for supporting multiple instances, and which is called multi-nancy. Okay. And Oracle automatically optimize the use of memory of each instance. So if you have recommended RAM in your system, then you don't need to worry about usage of a resource by each instance. Will manage everything for you. And now Oracle transit to client server-based architecture to cloud architecture, which means although we need to study this complicated architecture for now, but you don't need to study architecture Oracle back components maybe in 5 years. Oracle will do everything for you at cloud, although you need to pay fee every month. Okay, so we'll see what system global area components included in Oracle system later, but we already looked at DB Writer, but I will take a look at DB Writer again and monitor this. Man is process to monitor server status and user status, and LGWR stands for log writer, and PMON stands for process monitor. The CKPK stands for checkpoint. SMON stands for system monitor, and archive. LREG process is newly added components from Oracle 12c. And we will take a look at LREG later. This is quite unique components. And by having LREG, by enabling LREG components, the task of DBA with Oracle 12c or later versions are minimized. But still, some DBAs prefers not to use LREG components because they want to they want to manually manage Oracle database at very low levels. Okay, so when you did DML assignments to apply changes at your tables permanently, you needed to execute or you needed to issue commit command, right, to apply the changes. But have you ever thought about how it is possible to temporarily have your changes, although the changes may not affect the other users. The Oracle database has buffer cache. So if you do something with DMLs, the active behaviors and activities results by behaviors are saved in buffer cache. Okay. And once you decided to issue commit command, Oracle reads data in buffer and ask DB writer to write changes permanently. That's the process. That's procedure. That is the procedure of writing data in permanently. And dirty buffer, there are three types of buffers: dirty buffer, free buffer, pinned buffer. So dirty buffer or the buffer blocks needs to written data file, base file, which means no more results by normal DML activities are saved in dirty buffer. Actually, it's not dirty at all. It is something to be applied later. So I think they don't use the terminology any longer because there is read log buffer. So it is old residual of the previous Oracle databases. And anyway, pre-buffer doesn't contain anything, any data. Okay, so it is purely used as a cache to read data from physical files before loading data from physical file to memory. Okay, it is used as a pure cache memory. So if you take a look in the computer or laptop, there are many components: CPU, RAM, and storage or peripherals, right? And peripherals is not frequently used, so it doesn't it may affect, but if peripherals are not used, it doesn't affect your computer performance. But CPU, RAM, and storage are always used, even you're watching the screen. So among those three, which one is slowest, or which one is fastest? CPU, RAM, storage. Even though you have SSD, well, we have a lot of different storage like hard drive, SSD, or M2, or tape writer. Among those three, CPU is the fastest, and second fastest is RAM or memory, and storage is always slowest, even though you're using really fast SSD or M2. So what computer does is read data in the storage and load to memory, and CPU access data in memory. That is how computer processes. So because the data accessing storage is really slow, extra data from storage is loaded to memory. And before release the memory data, before releasing data and memory, the data is stored in buffer, just in case the data may not be used by CPU later again. Okay, so that is the free buffer or Oracle database. Okay, so you have to think about let's say you need to find author name in of your textbook, and you don't memorize anything. The only thing you memorize or remember is textbook title. And we are not let's assume we are not living in internet era. The only way is you have to go to library, right? Search book title, book information using book title, and then check out the author name. And low data is like data or information at really large spaces like a library. And if you need to memorize, if you need to use the author name over again, sometimes it's better to leave or write author name in stickers. And sticker which is attached onto your monitor side could be free buffer. Okay, so these are types of buffers. Pinned buffer, well, it's similar to a free buffer, but well, there's purposes, but actually these purposes, well, I don't think, well, these days they separate the buffers for those purposes. But anyway, buffers may have all these three different purposes. So anyway, the read log buffer is the most important buffer, and changes are known as redo entries. So it is records, the record form of redo log buffer is entry. So it keeps the form of entry. For instance, what was inserted and what was updated or what was deleted. And it's use vector data structure. So which means the read log entries are stacked first from the first redo and the last redo. So by checking out first redo and last redo, if you need to work back every changes in the vector from the first and last, it needs the redo log buffer needs to read backward from last to the first. Okay, shared pool is for components to support shared resources like internal Java application within the Oracle database. So well, I believe we will come back to shared pool in the later chapters. The process monitor, system monitor, and DB writer. So these are background processes we'll need to see again. Checkpoint, log writer, process monitor, and system monitor. Okay, so and when DB writer is triggered, there's several scenarios. Every 3 seconds, I'm sorry, DB writer, when the buffer filled a certain level, you can you can decide the percentage. Let's, for instance, 90% to 30%. So if the log entries takes 30% of the total amount of dirty buffer, log DB writer begin to write. Or if you define checkpoint, DB writer begin to write by reading dirty buffers. And or if you issue commit command, then DB writer begin to read dirty buffer to write data in database files. Okay, and log writer writes every 3 seconds, or user commits transaction, or when read buffer is a third full, log writer begin to write log, not database. Okay, and or when read log buffer contains 1 megabyte worth of read information, then you begin to write the log. So read log writer writes a lot of logs very frequently. Maybe so if you operate the database, then you'll see, well, you'll be surprised. Log files are really large. Normally, log files, if you don't set up the maximum size, log writer may produce couple of gigabytes every day because it records all the events. What was passed, what was written, what was system results, what was the result by process monitor, what was the results, what are the results by system monitors. So you have to set its cap. Normally I prefer set 10 megabytes, but it is up to you. It is up to your system, and it is up to your preferences. For instance, if the database is linked with web server, and if the web server is for individual customers like Amazon, there are many customers on Amazon. They will check out price and check out many of items since they may place many of orders. So if your system set if your system is set to write logs every single activity by users, I cannot guarantee how big is the log files and how many log files will be generated. I cannot guarantee. And when I was a DBA of online music online streaming site, online streaming company of South Korea, I said we had 3 million users. So I could see in one day, it was almost 15, it was 15 years ago, 17 years ago. Yeah, 17 to 16 to 17 years ago. So when I first joined to the company as a DBA, I was very surprised. They used lots of big tape writer like this. This is a storage. Looks like cassette tape, right? But actually, this is cassette, not for music, for archiving data. So I could see at least 10 cassette was used to archive data, log files. So I decided to minimize log usages, log writer usages. And what I've changed at the time is set priority of a user's activity, and only high priority activities are recorded in log writers. That's what I did. So we could save many of cassette tape, and we don't need to maintain a little large archiving center. So archiving room center, what we actually is a room. We have shelves, and each shelf it has 3 cassette, not cassette, tape. So to find certain log by users, it took a lot of times. So that is why I cut many of logs. Okay, so control file, data file, read log file parameters, and archive log. You can find those 4 types of files in where is it? In one. If you're idle at the VPN for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, you'll need to log in again. Password is P. Caption is locked. Okay, so control files here, right? Log files here, system, sysaudit system, temp, user, and parameter files is here, right? And redo log files also here. You can find those files in this folder. Okay, so let me open using text editor. We cannot open. Maybe, but it's possible to open log file. Okay, it's not possible. Strange. Okay, can you guess? Can you guess why we can't open those files? Why we can't? Let me test with general file. Let me create a text file, test, and I will type anything, random text. Okay, I'll save it. I can open, right? Normally, it should be we should be able to open file, but we cannot open. So this is a characteristic of, even though the file was, this file is opened by other application, still it is possible to open using Notepad++. It is possible, right? And to explain why we can't use the database file is you have to see the difference of random access file. Random access file cannot be modified or opened if the file is opened by other application or other process. In this case, Oracle database is up and Oracle database opened the database file and still it is not closed by the process. So we cannot open random access file. To open the file using a kind of third-party applications like Notepad++, we have to close Oracle database. And once Oracle database closed, this file is not opened by Oracle database so that we can open. But it doesn't mean the other files in Oracle Home cannot be opened by Notepad++. Okay, so shortly, as long as Oracle database is active, we cannot open those files, especially data file. Okay, so in control file, you can read control what is the control files and what is the data files, and what is read log files, what is logical structure. Yeah, let me explain logical structure. So basically, Oracle database, to access and to write and to Oracle in random access file, Oracle defines units of data. Block is the smallest unit, and extent is the second smallest, and segment is the largest unit, which is handled by Oracle database. So if you update very small, very tiny part of your database, and if the change is not larger than block, then database will not write anything. Once block is filled, then Oracle database begin to write block or apply new block to the database file. So it's like it is unlike a bus. Bus or text. So if you wait a bus at the bus station, and once bus station, once passengers get in the bus, then bus will stop, will leave the bus station, right? To arrive the next bus station. The number of passengers doesn't matter, but Oracle matters the size of data. Once means if a block is not filled, Oracle will not do anything. Okay, and normally, but actually, the block is the normal block is larger than many cases. So normally, segment should be filled for Oracle begin to write. Okay, so that is the well, this logical comparison of tables and units, which is segments in the table, and each segment contains couple of extents and blocks. So segments has nothing with its logical category or classification. It only matters how actual data is nearby to the others. So again, if you insert 100 employees, although you can sort the employees by using some certain columns like employee ID or first name and last name or hire date, but it doesn't mean the second record is written right next the first employee. We have no idea where it's located. So if one segment, well, employee 1 and employee 100 are stored in segment 1, segment 1 reads, extends, and if extends is filled with changed blocks, it begins to write segment 1. So it is just simply how physically located. Okay, so it only matters how physically located each other. Let me find some good example of segment. Well, I believe I can explain segment and well, it's impossible to physically show the concept of segment and extended block. But anyway, you have to the table space. Under table space, there are multiple segments, and under one segment there are extents, and under on extent there are multiple blocks. So you have to, well, that's the logical hierarchy of table space through blocks. Okay, so chapter 8, we looked at chapter 8, and well, and we looked at the overview of the architecture of Oracle database. Still have I need to cover chapter 10, chapter 9. Okay, so Oracle data chapter 9. Let me quickly go through some part of chapter 9. Chapter 9 shows how what kind of applications it doesn't explain any all the applications in Oracle Suite, but only explains some application packages in Oracle database. So we define Oracle Home, okay, and I installed Oracle database using Oracle Universal Installer, and it provides graphical user interface, and I should capture a screenshot how I installed, what options I selected, and like this, there are several graphical applications which supports graphical user interface, and Oracle Universal Installer automatically create one instance if you first time Oracle Installer. So how can you add instance not using Oracle database? We have to use DBCA, named DBCA, which stands for Oracle Database Configuration Assistant. And that is the Java-based graphical user interface application. And if you go to Oracle 19 Home 1 in Start menu, then there is Database Configuration Assistant. And if you hit the application, then you'll see graphical user interface. But the menus are slightly different from 12c. So this is the DBCA of Oracle Database 19c. And using this application, you can create a new database or you can delete database, existing database. In this case, database means database instance, okay? And you can change existing database, okay? Or you can merge two different databases. Okay, this option enables you to create new database instance, but we are not going to create any database instance for now. But let me show what options are possible to select when I create a database instance while I installed Oracle database. So to see them, you have to select the second option. Then it shows database list of database instances, but we have one database instance only. So this is the only database instance that we can modify. Okay, go to next. Then you don't need to modify anything. So you will see the error, right? The reason is I created master Oracle database, and the master Oracle database was copied to your virtual account. So now you just log in using you log in using info 4560 dash 0 something, which belongs to you, right? But your account is not belong to user group, which has privilege of Oracle database. Your Windows user needs to belong to ORA-DBA. This is the user group which can operate Oracle database. So we'll need to work on to make sure our Windows user accounts belong to the group. Okay, so anyway, so this is why we can't modify existing Oracle database for now. So DBA, using DBCA, you can create, modify, and merge, or you can define template to merge two different databases. And if you have enough privileges, it is possible to change character set, and it is possible to change system account and system account passwords, and it is possible to change path of Oracle database, the directory of the instance. In other words, you can change location of files for your instance using these options. And it is possible to allocate RAM, and you can change buffer size and Java pool size and large pool sizes for optimizing your database instance. But it doesn't mean it is impossible to adjust using other applications. Using EM or SQL Plus, it is possible to adjust memory configuration. But unlike SQL Plus, DBC provides graphical user interface, so which means it's easier to use than SQL Plus. So once you change once you finish the changes, then you will show summarized information like this, and finally you can apply the changes. Okay, so and data dictionary views. I'm going to continue from chapter page 18 on this Thursday. So we right now using our virtual account, we have no privileges to access the system as a CCDBA, but by doing in-class exercises and your homework, you will obtain system privileges to access data dictionary views. But I have one Oracle database with privilege. I can show how data dictionary views can be found and where we can find data dictionary views. All right, let me continue from page 18 on this Thursday. And again, quiz 1 will be next Thursday. 1 and 2 will be the next Thursday. Okay. Because quiz 1 is about chapter 8, but I could complete chapter 8 today, so there's no way to take the quiz 1 today. So quiz 1 is moved to September 9th. So you will take the quiz 1 and 2 on the next Thursday. Okay, so any question? Well, so I don't want to hold you guys in this room for 1 hour. I want to dismiss class within 1 hour, but once I begin to lecture, then I could I have a lot of things to explain about the Oracle database. It is very complicated system, and I want to yes. VMware.
Yeah, it's not loading.
Is that loading?
It took a little while.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think all students have same issue. Can you guys send me screenshots so that I can share the issue with the IT department? Yes. Yes, I need to talk with to IT's department. Just no one. Okay, let me stop recording. This